No, and you were not the only person. I actually have had 3 or 4 different people came on, so it's fine.
We were just
Doesn't
anxious to
hurt.
hear you.
No, that didn't do it. There's something else going on, and I'm going to have to figure this one out. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Today is the topic is volunteer appreciation and recognition planning. And it is something that's beyond what we do or what AARP does with Andrus. So I thought this might be a topic we could talk about and figure out how we're going to do things going forward. Ellen, would you like to start with your question, please?
Sure thing. I think you all can hear me, right?
Mm-hmm.
My question is for the group. How do people ensure that their volunteers feel appreciated? Or how do both sides, how do volunteers feel appreciated?
And you can all come off mute because this is a group where I expect that any comments are going to be in addition to the knowledge base. So please feel free.
May I speak as a volunteer?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We've just this spring and early summer attempted to return to in-person events. And one of the things that in Virginia, we have our state divided into 4 quadrants for community outreach. We have 4 ASDs in each one of the quadrants. And in an effort to bring those teams back together, each of the ASDs planned and implemented an in-person event. At least 3 of them, I believe, were picnics. One was an indoor event, I think. But the fact that the state director made an appearance, made an effort to, and did in fact get to all 4 of those events, I think made the volunteers feel appreciated and valued. That he would take the time away from what no doubt for a state director is a very busy schedule and job to travel all over the state to be with us in the various areas. So that might seem like a really little thing, but for the volunteers, it made an impression. And at some of the major events that we have, for example, we all the 50 states got fit lots, and ours was built in Virginia Beach, and it was finished during COVID. And as a consequence of that, we only in May, or maybe it was in June, it's just recently, had the ribbon cutting event for that. And Jim he was there for that. Another of our focus communities is Lynchburg here in the western part of the state. And we have what do you call a farm team in Lynchburg called the Hill Cats. Mm-hmm. And the Southwest team is sponsoring an AARP night, and he's coming to that. So just the fact that he's where we are is makes us feel valued, that he thinks it's as important for him to be there as it is for us to be there. So that's one thing.
I was going to add, I got some of these when they were advertised on, it looks backwards probably to you, but those thank you cards. And when I have a volunteer, I'm the state president like Joyce is, right? Yes. Then, I send out one of those little cards to folks, or even if folks can't come to a meeting for some reason, I try to think of some reason to tell them how they're appreciated and send that out. So that's another thing. And we do similar, Joyce, we do similar sorts of things. Our state director does. He's really good at supporting me, and he and I'll go on the road and do events when we can get them back into non-COVID ways. And hopefully this next variant isn't going to cause us issues, but doing that together and meeting people, I think makes a big difference, especially if you're recruiting, that people go, oh, this must be important. So I think there is value in that. And I agree with you that it's an important aspect.
I do the cards too, and Jessie has her hand up, so I'm sure she's going to add something. But Jessie was just kind enough this week to make sure I got addresses for every volunteer throughout the state. So I have that now and can use that to do exactly what you're doing, Linda. I'm sorry, Jessie, I didn't mean to delay your comment.
Joyce, you can take all the time you want from me. I'm never going to mind. But I was just going to say, you know, my role in the Virginia State Office, I've actually gotten to work with Joyce some on planning some volunteer appreciation stuff, which has been really fun. But so I kind of oversee our statewide appreciation events. So those tend to be a little bit more formal is maybe not the right word, but you know, we've done things like virtual events. Pre-COVID, we would have an in-person kind of awards volunteer appreciation event every year. You know, we've sent end-of-year gifts or thank you notes signed by the state director and state president to all of our active volunteers before. And I think, you know, those statewide appreciation initiatives are really important, but you also have to balance them with personal thank yous and, you know, acknowledging folks for their individual contributions, which is why I love that you held up the thank you cards, Linda. And I think too, also just helping volunteers connect what they're doing to the impact that we're having and the mission of AARP. I think, you know, I feel a lot more appreciated when I understand why, you know, even the boring parts of my job matter, right? So I think kind of helping connect and explaining, you know, thank you for that good work that you did. And this was the outcome. Like, this is what we did with it and why it was worth the time and effort you put into it.
Hey, it looks like
Do
Jack.
you have something you wanted to say?
Are you
Jack?
calling on me? This is Jackie.
Right.
Yes.
I think your hand is up. Yes.
It is. It is. I just wanted to let Joyce know, I actually lived in Virginia, north of Roanoke for 6 years. So that's a beautiful part of the country. But what I wanted to say is I was also a state president for 6 years, and now I'm acting as the legislative advocacy lead volunteer that oversees 3 issue teams. And one of the things I've really come to realize is that you need to not wait to recognize people and their contributions, whether it's on a specific testimony in a committee hearing that was crucial to getting a bill passed, or it's participating in a radio show. We have them locally here in Santa Fe, where we talk about all kinds of things that are going on, especially during the legislative session, or attending a task force meeting and reporting out on that and what they say. But be very specific when you recognize them. Let them know that you appreciate precisely what they did and what they said and how that contributed to the overall efforts, especially with getting legislation passed. So that's it.
Well, and I'm
I'm
sorry.
gonna say I agree
I'll
with
wait till
that.
after
I've
you,
learned
Mary.
recognition doesn't have to be gifts or big things. Volunteers, and they've told me they really just love that we give them verbal recognition. So we have a regular advocacy call with all of our volunteers, and I do a volunteer shout outs at the end of every call. and we put their names on the slide and what they did. So I have like hub dialer heroes, or, you know, if they volunteered like recently at an in-person event and they were our first back to in-person event volunteers or anything. And then I explain what they did, like you said, Jackie, that's great. Because also when we have these regular advocacy calls, we invite new volunteers in to, you know, learn about what we do if they're interested in doing some advocacy work and volunteering with us. So it's also, and other volunteers, it's an opportunity for them to hear what else there is. If maybe they don't know or they've not heard, but then that kind of jogs their interest a little if they'd like to do something different or something else.
Okay, one of the things I want to add is, and I might have told this group this before, so stop me if I have. One of the things when I have a group together is that I ask them to, when they introduce themselves, to tell me what profession they retired from and how many years they worked in that profession. And I add those years up so that by the end of the time, everybody in the room knows that we have lawyers and bankers and nurses and fire folks and all these kinds of things. But when you add up the years, it's absolutely amazing. We had an advocacy training session where we had about 30 people, and we ended up with 1,300 years of experience in that room. That is real recognition of what they've done in the past and what they bring to AARP.
Great. Mary?
I just wanted to say that it hit home when you said not to put off any recognition that a volunteer has achieved, because sometimes when you do that, it makes the volunteer feel like you're dangling the carrot. And we've all done that in our work lives, and it doesn't really work. I love AARP, don't get me wrong, but the last 2 years, especially last year in particular, was extremely tough. And I think it's important that people listen to each other. It's nice to say thank you, but do you really mean thank you? I mean, you need to listen to what someone's saying. Don't anticipate what they're saying, but listen to what they're saying. And if their idea doesn't work, you know, have a conversation with them. I'm I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but I just, you know, I've been on the other side of the spectrum because we have gone through a lot in our particular state. And just don't say thank you for the sake of saying thank you. Actually mean it. And because people can tell, they know when you're just saying thank you to say you're being polite. Just really mean it and listen to your volunteers. Really, they want to work with you. They want to be part of your team. So include them, make them feel like they're part of the team. That's probably the greatest form of appreciation you could give a volunteer.
Mary, I want to add on to that conversation though, because sometimes we don't know everything that people have been doing. And maybe it's just thank you for your contributions and willing to be working with us when you have so many different choices you can choose from to volunteer. I think that makes a difference too, because I know there are things that my social media volunteer is doing that I don't even know about. And so just a little thing like that can make a difference also. I hear what you're saying, but I just want to also add that sometimes we don't know all that people are doing. So, you know, just kind of being careful there.
Just as an FYI, your volunteers know what the other volunteers are doing, and they're more than happy to pass it on to you.
But I think what I hear you both saying is the level of sincerity has to be there, right? So Linda, to your point, whether you're totally familiar with what that volunteer is doing, your thank you is sincere and they know it's sincere, right? And I think that's what I hear Mary saying is that's really critical. So thank you all, this is great.
Yeah,
Oh,
one of the
had a
things,
general
that
comment.
actually,
This is so
I'm
helpful is
sorry.
what I meant, Jackie, telling
I'm
us all to
sorry.
be specific.
Be specific. One of the things that I've also done, because I know of people's backgrounds, is that I thank them. We have an attorney who worked in another state as a utility lawyer, and he works on the utilities team. And it's invaluable to have somebody like that reading those documents, especially the legalese and legislative language that they use. And so I will defer to him and say, let's hear from Cameron, because we really need to know what's happening on the ground. And so when you ask people to put forth their expertise on something, that is a great compliment, because it does give them an opportunity to be part of the conversation and usually add some really good stuff to whatever is going on. And I'm going to end this. I need to step away. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to try to come back in just a few minutes.
Okay, Ellen, is there anything else? Huh?
I think that covers it for that first question.
And Mary, I think this would be your time.
I will take it from here. And I just kind of want to circle back to something that Jackie said about the expertise of volunteers. Often that goes unrecognized, and many times just acknowledging the level of expertise of the not only the individual, but the collective group goes a long way, because many times some of the tasks that volunteers are either choose to do or are asked to do are, but they're roles that doesn't require a lot of thought. However, the humility that it takes for someone who is a trained expert in a specific field and they choose to volunteer goes a long way. The humility that brings to the project goes a long way. And I've used that same concept that Jackie used with my staff that I worked with at the university many times, just to get a point across by combining the total years of expertise of the group. It was usually 100 or close to 200 years of experience and expertise. And I know that in any group, and even this group here, if we combined our collective expertise from our individual areas, we would probably be close to that. And that's a lot of brain power. That's a lot of resources. That says something. So.
Mary, before you go on to the next question, though, could I just add one more thing?
Mm-hmm.
Thanking for expertise is wonderful. And as state president, with the 250, 60, 70 volunteers that we have in Virginia, I don't pretend to know the expertise of a quarter of them. But the other thing that I think is so important is a volunteer's commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that in meetings like this, and Martin's off camera, but I'm going to do a shout out for Martin. You see Martin on these kinds of calls. He's from Virginia, by the way. Oh, well, he says it there, doesn't it? You see Martin on these kinds of calls all the time. And when I go to the fast track meetings or to the meeting that we had, I guess was the last week with when Nancy invited leadership. And I look down that list of participants and I see, 7 people from Virginia out of 70. You better believe they get a note from me that says, my goodness, you all were a large group of those attendees. And so I just think the commitment that volunteers have when they participate in this kind of conversation, or fast track conversations, or conversations with Nancy when she has them, is just so worthy of acknowledgement. That I know I appreciate, I know they say numbers don't mean everything, but when I look at a group like this or others, and 25 to 35% of them are from Virginia, I want to say, dang, you're wonderful. And I hope it means something to hear that. Because I think commitment is just the most, well, I don't know if it's the most important thing, but I think it's certainly one of the most important things that a volunteer can have.
And you're right, it is. Thank you for sharing that, Joyce. So my question is that AARP is anticipating a prescription drug or RX victory during this next year. What would you suggest as a fun or a unique or innovative way to show thanks to volunteers who work on that special advocacy effort? And if it's not, fun or cool, something useful, how can we appreciate our volunteers who worked on that? Any ideas?
I'll just say good question.
Do we have any advocacy experts here on the prescription drug campaign? Mary?
Yeah, I've worked on it in my state.
So what would make you feel appreciated for that? I mean, that's been a long, hard struggle and a long, hard fight.
I was gonna say champagne, but we need a big party.
Kathy, do you hear that?
Actually, I think there are some things that are champagne worthy, right, Mary? I mean, I'm so glad you can have that question, Mary, because how long have we worked as an organization? How many years have the volunteers gone back at it again and again and again? So if and when that does happen, yeah, I do think it's time to pull out all the stops, right? It isn't time for a certificate or, something that might be in the everyday category. So I love this question. So keep brainstorming, folks. Keep going, Mary. Champagne and.
I wonder if it would be a interesting recruitment idea if in states where there have been volunteers like Mary, that in a radio spot, you might list, these are some of the folks that have been volunteered at an AARP spot. These are some of the folks that have participated, and we'd like to extend our thank you to all of them, or on Facebook or whatever your social media might be to get the word out there. It might be exciting. I don't know, maybe Mary, you're our representative person here right now, it seems, but how would that make you feel if you heard that on your national radio or on a, would that be a nice recognition?
If you're asking me, I can't tell you how I would feel about that. I will tell you that in our state office, the one thing that they do have is, because we did a lot of work, not only on prescription drugs, but we also did a lot of work on the First in the Nation primary. And when you walk into the state office, you not only see the Andrus Award winners, but you also see the photos that have been blown up and they're on the walls of all the different volunteers who worked and did primary work. And it didn't matter if you were at every single event or you were only at one person. Each person that participated in that particular campaign, their picture, and it's a group picture, but the pictures are on the wall, and it brings back a lot of memories. And they're good memories too, because it was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun.
And I think that goes to show the value of, just documenting something like that in a photo, because photos do speak 1,000 words. And if we can't say thank you enough, we can certainly put it out there so that everybody that goes in that building sees who we are thanking for their efforts toward working on the prescription drug campaign. So I think that's a wonderful idea.
So one other thing, I did think of something extremely positive too, is when we did go back in person and we had our first visit into the state office, all the staff blew up balloons and they had them lining the hallway. So the minute you get off the elevator, you saw all these balloons and you saw these signs that say, "We love our volunteers, we miss your volunteers." And it was all along the way into going into the state office. So that was really very nice.
That is a nice feel-good representation, and you can walk back and forth many times, and you can take your picture and you can put it on social media and everybody can have fun with it. You know, it's wonderful that something small like that can make people feel good. But who doesn't like walking through a hall filled with balloons? Makes you
My
smile.
husband doesn't because he has a latex allergy and can't breathe, which is a funny anecdote, but also probably a good note in terms of like, we need to also think about who our appreciation efforts might exclude, and how can we make sure that they still feel included, you know, knowing that you can't 100% accommodate everyone's top choice of an appreciation effort, but also kind of thinking about who might this leave out and how can we tweak it or add to it so that they aren't excluded.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful, wonderful anecdote, Jessie. Something so that everybody can be included. Mylar balloons. That's a great point, Kathy. Any other ideas? And certainly the thank you notes and you know, all the small things go a long way too. Putting it in the bulletin and in the local newspaper, or local, especially in small areas where newspapers are a main focus of conversation and a lot of people read them. Streamers, yes, streamers could be used, or a nice social media backdrop that is Mylar, and pictures can be taken against that too, with a big welcome, or like Joyce's banner behind her, some specialized AARP thank you volunteers that can stay there for a while and we can use it over and over again, pull it out on special occasions. All of those are wonderful suggestions. And Deborah, I think in the interest of time, we might want to move to the next question, but if anybody has any other things to contribute to this line of conversation, we'll be glad to hear them. Do you want me to
Yes.
do the next one, Deborah?
Sure, go right ahead.
So do you involve the larger community when you recognize volunteers? And if so, how is that accomplished? Are there any front-facing community volunteer appreciation events other than Andrus that go on? Any creative ideas out there? Jessie, I see you unmuting, and Joyce, you're next.
We don't invite the public to like volunteer appreciation events necessarily, but we usually also, in conjunction, we'll post about it on our social media, or you know, for Andrus awards or volunteer awards, we'll do press releases. You know, we'll have, sometimes we have a volunteer newsroom, and so sometimes they'll write volunteer spotlight articles that we can post on our website. So we do try to acknowledge and celebrate our volunteers publicly, both to give them a shout out and also, I think, promote volunteer opportunities with AARP. But you know, if we're planning an appreciation event, it wouldn't necessarily be something that folks who are not volunteers or a loved one of a volunteer is invited to.
Thank you very much.
I was
Joyce?
just going to add that, you know, in addition to the Andrus Awards in here in Virginia, we have bunches of other awards, including an advocacy award. And the person that won our advocacy award for this year was truly an outstanding recipient. She put together a document. One of our key goals, advocacy goals for AARP Virginia in the Virginia legislature is nursing home reform. And Debbie put together a document, a voluminous document aimed at General Assembly members, our Senate and our House of Delegates, but it was available to others as well, that showed how close to or far away from every nursing home throughout the state came to what was acceptable nursing home staffing standards. And so the point being that states can have awards other than just the Ethel P. Andrus Award. And in Virginia, we do recognize others as well formally. So that's an opportunity that we've seized upon. And I know other states may do that too, but I just wanted to be sure that was pointed out.
Thank you, and a very deserving award as well. So Mary put a suggestion has been made to recognize a Speakers Bureau member. We have one that does a tremendous job in bringing Speakers Bureau in the limelight, especially when we were in quarantine. So how would you recognize a Speakers Bureau member? I think that's a tremendous thing to do.
Well, actually, it's kind of along the line of doing the advocacy, recognizing the advocacy person of the year, just the Speakers Bureau member of the year.
Well, and that a light bulb just went off in my head again. Jesse mentioned that we have a virtual newsroom here in Virginia. Our communications ASD oversees a couple of dozen of us throughout the state that write articles and post articles and create stories, if you will, about AARP. And one of the things that Ginger Thompson is our ASD for communication did this past end of the year was put together a what was sort of a kudos board. It wasn't exactly, but it was sort of a kudos board of what members of that virtual newsroom team had done, and created a slide/video of recognizing that was distributed to all the members and the staff. But that also led me to a real kudos board that we did for our last, and Jessie might talk more about this because she was instrumental in getting it set up, but we created a kudos board that on which people throughout the state created scores of slides and pictures of volunteers at various events, and sometimes just comments about somebody that had done something outstanding or worthy of recognition. And I don't know, Jesse, it ended up being what, maybe 15 minutes long? It was 12 to 15 minutes long anyway, but it was long enough that we decided to, I believe, put it at the end so that if people at the end of our virtual ceremony got, tired of looking at it at that time, they could go back to it later. But it turned out to be beautifully done. So thank you, Jesse, for that.
Well, maybe Jesse might be willing to share that if it's something that can be shared in the chat, in the portal.
I will just say, kudoboard.com, you can set up kudo boards. And I think I ended up spending like $20 or something to get a kudo board that I could then turn into like a video presentation. But it was a really great way for everybody in the state to be able to be involved and interact and show each other. So we invited all the staff and also all the volunteers. We sent them all the link and said, if you want to post a video, if you want to post a shout out, if you want to post photos, celebrating what, your colleagues have done in the last year, please do it. And, we had a really great response. I think it was a lot of fun.
That is a great use of that tool too. And I know for I think a Kudo board that has up to 100 entries, it's maybe $20 and well worth the $20 for the feeling that it provides everyone. So thanks for sharing that, Joyce, and thanks for doing that, Jesse. Deborah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
That's fine. That's fine. And thank you all for so many of the ideas that have been given today. I've got lots of notes on those, and I'm sure other people do as well. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we do, because we always try to do it in July, and that is to make sure that the next few months answer the questions that are burning with you. So I'm going to put out, and I know some people enjoy these polls and others don't, but in any case, can you all see this?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. What we put on here are the 5 topics for the next 5 months. And I'd just love to know if any of these are of interest to you. So you can add something, click on it, or whatever. I think you can, it's multiple choice, so you can, if there are 2 of them, feel free. And that's question 1.
If you can't read the whole thing, if you hover over it, it pops the whole item up.
Yeah. Question 1, it was getting, or choice 1 was getting back on track and finishing 2022 with strength, volunteer engagement opportunities for the next 4 months. These are listed in the order in which they were going to occur. Best practices ensuring effective outreach to all volunteers. October, we'd said best practices for engaging volunteers in planning for 2023. How best to encourage and support the sharing of volunteer engagement ideas. How do we get the information that's in all of our brains to the people who need it at the time they're trying to figure out an answer? And then evaluating the impact of volunteer-led events. This was one we had talked about for December. So what we'll do is go back on the information that you've provided here, and I think I'll probably send this information out to the 50 or so other people who are on the list and ask for their opinions as well. And then we'll, those that are most interested in topics, so, we'll make those the high points, and other things, we'll come up with new ones. Now, the second question here is really what additional topic, subject matter, or guest should we invite this year? So, if there's something up there that you didn't see or would just like to add to it, if you put in an answer, that will be great. Okay? And we'll take care of all of that information. Okay? Anyone still thinking? Okay. I'm going to end this, and we'll capture all of it. Okay, you can see where the results came up. It looks like August, and the things were October and December may have been the most interesting to this group right now. So some of them we'll have to let go. and we'll find out what people say. Okay. I did have one more thing. Okay if I shut this down now?
We don't see it, actually.
Oh, well, maybe because it says to share results. And I'm going, well, I can see it.
We see it now. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. So, okay, I won't bother doing anything else. Uh, but what I did was create a poll everywhere question. And that I think is one I'll send out as well. And what I ask in that question is, what is one thing you would like to change or like to see happen with this exchange in over the next 5 months? So I'm going to send that question out to people, and you can respond on the board. It will capture all of your questions in that way, or comments. So, okay. So this is where we are. Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry that I didn't share it at the appropriate time, but now I can stop sharing. Okay?
Thank you, Deborah.
All right. I will stop sharing. We'll get out of the poll. Okay. So we are now at the end of our time for this month. Uh, as usual, if you've got materials that you want, one of the questions or comments we didn't get to is, how would you like to have people ask for your opinions? How would you like to, how do people find out what a volunteer appreciates besides a group like this? Is there some way that, is there would an email be good? Is it a survey form? What works? So those are the kinds of thoughts, because if we can't come up with some way to get the information, we find ourselves responding in a way maybe we'd like to, or we think that would be a good thing. So trying to figure out, how do we keep getting that input from people? And I know it's hard. There's so many things always going on, and so many ways that people are pulled. But this kind of discussion is useful, I think, for a lot of people, in spite of the fact that, there are people from the same state here, which is great, but you're sharing information with those of us from other states, and we wouldn't hear it any other way. So thank you very much for coming and providing that information today. So I really appreciate it. We'll put the copies of the recording in the portal chatter as usual. And if you've got any idea about how we gather information and want to share that, please just send something to me or to Mary, and we'll put that in to share with the group as well. And also any of the results of this survey that we did in terms of the poll. The August meeting is actually on the 9th. And as usual, it'll be determined, its topic, on the basis of what people have said. So we'll shift list around and get that updated list back out to people before the 9th occurs. So you have some idea about what the subject is, okay? And what your input was on it. So thank you all very much. I don't want to keep you any longer. Are there any questions, comments, or anything today?
I don't have a question, but I do want to say how much I value what we do here. And I think that's hopefully obvious in that I keep showing up every time. But
Appreciate
especially
it.
thanks to both of you, Mary and Deborah, for for facilitating these things every month, because it's just, I find it invaluable. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the comments. And of course, I couldn't do this anything without Mary. She's just absolutely a wonderful leader and co-facilitator and co-conspirator if necessary. So thank you all very much. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Ellen, and thank you everyone who participates in the planning. So have a great day, all of you.
Enjoy the wonderful weather.
Yes.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe. Stay safe. I'm turning off the recording.
Very good.
Okay, sure you want to stop recording?